We are live. All right. We are here back with Blockchain Buzz. Archie, the only punctual one today. How's it going, buddy?
It's going great. It's good to be on the show again. I thoroughly enjoyed the last episode that we did, and a lot has happened in the market since then. So it's going to be great to discuss it with some fellow crypto enthusiasts, and yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the last time we talked, um, Bitcoin had not lost the Gaussian channel or, the 50 week yet, right? As you and I were talking about. Uh, we both had the same kind of mindset that if we did lose that range, then it was likely Dunsville for the market for the foreseeable future.
Right.
And now that's kind of happened. So why don't you give me your thoughts on how that played out, and we'll kind of go from there.
Absolutely. So we've been talking about the 50-week moving average. I'm sure on both of our channels, Gaussian channel is a similar thing as well. For a very long period of time, we've been discussing it on probably every single show that we do, and it's because of the significance of it. Right? Everyone knows the 50-week, so it's quite funny actually. People say that that is a reason to go against it, is because everyone knows about it, but I think sometimes people take being contrarian to the extreme to the next level. It's great being contrarian, and I tend to be more on the contrarian side than average, but people take it to the extreme to the point where they say we can't trust any TA, we can't trust any moving average, we can't trust the fibs, we can't trust support and resistance, we can't trust anything. And I
Yeah.
think it gets a bit ridiculous when people go down that route, because at that point you've got nothing to go off, right? You've got no invalidation point, you've got no point to de-risk. It's just guesswork, and you're just hoping for the best. And for me, the 50-week moving average was the line in the sand for my personal spot portfolio. Um, Now, that doesn't mean that we have to go into a 1-year bear market. Maybe we'll discuss whether we're in a bear market or not a little bit later. But for me, it just shows that we have lost momentum with Bitcoin. And if you think fundamentally about what a moving average is, I mean, it's quite self evident. It's just an average of where Bitcoin has been in the past however many days or weeks or whatever. So what it shows is Bitcoin is losing momentum. It's not able to hold the previous levels that we've been trading on average for the previous, however many days or weeks. So to me, it is a weak signal. But what happens is you mention the loss of the 50-week, and then everyone thinks that means we're going into a 1-year bear market. We're going down 80%, right? Which is a typical bear market for Bitcoin. And I don't necessarily think that is a guarantee. We could have some form of a mini bear market that lasts 6 months, something like that. We could have, just a short period below it, and then we break back above it. And that's why, for me, if we were to break back above it, I would also say, okay, we're back right into a parabolic bull run again for Bitcoin. So for me, yes, it's the line in the sand, but equally, if we break back above it at any point, I'm willing to jump back in. And a lot of the altcoins which maybe I sold, they might be at the same prices, maybe even lower, maybe a couple will be higher if we were to break back above it again. So that's kind of my take on it. I think you've got to have some form of invalidation level. Everyone's might be different, which is absolutely fine. But for me, I think the context matters as well. I was averaging into the market between 15 to 25k Bitcoin. That's where I deployed the vast majority of my capital this cycle. So maybe it is a little bit different from someone who is buying at those prices compared to someone who is buying at 90k, 100k Bitcoin. But yeah, to summarize, that's my thoughts on the 50-week.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. I agree with you. For about the last, I don't know, maybe 6 to 8 months, I've been harping on the channel about, when Bitcoin was around 123, $126,000, I was saying to everybody, like, guys, I know everyone's calling for a 200,000, 300. I mean, geez, Plan B and his targets. I mean, I said, guys, if I was to slip into a coma for 12 months, woke up and you told me that 126, 130 was the top, I wouldn't be shocked. And people say, well, that's bearish. It's bearish if you bought in January, but for people like you and I who are buying $15,000 Bitcoin, 15 to 126,000 is not bearish. That's a great return on investment. So perspective, I guess, kind of matters, right? Like you said, context, the devil's in the details.
Right.
So,
and I think that's a key point, right? Because this cycle in particular, alts haven't moved as they normally do. So someone who maybe joined the crypto market at 70K Bitcoin, let's just say, they actually might have lost money on that move from 70K to 126. They might have actually lost money if they're in altcoins, right? So they're kind of looking around and they're thinking, where are the profits to even sell? But that's because maybe they joined when Bitcoin was at 70K. And actually, from that move from 70K to 126, a lot of alts didn't do that great. I mean, if you look at some of the alts that I personally like, even coins like Sui, coins like Say, they were a lot higher when Bitcoin was a lot lower. But the difference is, if you were buying in when Bitcoin was at 15K, 20K, the levels you were buying at then on alts, and maybe you rotated them into other coins. I mean, I remember the AI coins. Like, I was buying super heavy into the AI coins in like early 2023, late 2022. And man, some of them 10, 20x, 50x in like a matter of weeks. So if you were selling those, rotating into other alts, you probably are up a lot if you stuck around since 2022, 2023. But for sure, the people who joined at 80K Bitcoin, 70K Bitcoin, maybe they're break even, maybe they're in a loss. So it's been a weird cycle, because you would think Bitcoin going from 70 or 74 all the way up to 126, you'd think alts would 10x, 20x, 30x, but it's been very selective. It hasn't been, across the board.
Yeah, and there's a lot to unpack in that. Like you just said, it's been a very, very weird market. This is my third full cycle, and I've not seen things play out this way. I mean, and there's a lot of valid arguments for a lot of potential ways that things could continue to play out. I have a couple of different theses on it personally. I think that Bitcoin could personally, in the next, 3 or 4 months, work its way back up to, I believe there's a CME gap around $110,000. I think that it's possible we could see, and if you go to, I'll show you something here real quick. If you go over to Bitcoin on the weekly, you'll see very clear, if we do come back up, a right shoulder that would be formed, which would drop us down somewhere close to the 200-week moving average, right? Which generally we drop just a little below there, and then it's a bit, kind of bottomed, right? So that's just one of many possibilities, but for that to happen, we would have to temporarily reclaim the 50-week, which could throw a lot of people off.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be a complacency shoulder. There's always going to be a complacency shoulder. Even if the top is in, I know maybe some people disagree in the chat, which is absolutely fine. But even if the top is in, there's going to be a rally, right? There's going to be a complacency shoulder. The question is, where will that complacency shoulder lead us to? Some people will say that we'll reject at the 50-week moving average. Maybe we just have a textbook rejection there, which is around 102K. Some people say we might go a bit higher, like you're suggesting the CME gap. Maybe we go to 109K. There's loads of different levels we could go to. So yeah, I expect a rally, and I'm actually in longs right now. Like, I'm actually bullish short term, but I think in the medium term, there are some real risks. We have lost some structure. People will try and make people believe we haven't lost any structure, but we have lost some structure. We've lost a macro golden pocket. We've lost a 50-week moving average. We've lost the bull market support band, just to name a few. So there's certainly been structural damages to Bitcoin. Some will say we haven't lost structure until we lose 74K, which to me, by the point we're at 74K, I mean, alts are already down 99% by that point, right? You've already had the bear market, well, most of it by that point. So if that's the invalidation point, you're already you're invalidating probably near the end of the bear market there for altcoins. But for sure, I think we are going to see a move down to the 200 week at some point. I think we're going to have a complacency shoulder up first, and then we'll see that move down to the 200. But I said I'm short-term bullish, hence why I'm in some long positions. Medium-term, probably somewhat cautious, somewhat bearish, because I'm expecting that move down to the 200 week some point in the next few months. But long-term, I'm super, super bullish. Even 2026, everyone is saying 2026 will be this crazy bear market. But if we can get this move to the 200-week moving average out the way in Q1, Bitcoin could be at new all-time highs by the end of 2026. When you look at some of the positive catalysts potentially, and it could go either way, right? Sometimes the things that people always think are positive sometimes can turn out to be negative. So, for example, the new Fed chair, we discussed this on the previous show we did. Everyone's expecting that to be a super bullish catalyst because of the fact that he's going to be very dovish. He's going to cut rates. But what if that's already been priced into an extent, and then when he gets in power, he can't cut as much as he wants? Because it's not all about the Fed chair, right? It's a committee or a board or whatever you want to call it. It's a group of people. They need some form of consensus between everyone on the board, or whatever the correct term is. So I do think there's some positive catalysts in 2026. New Fed chair could be one. Big Beautiful Bill could be somewhat stimulative. If Trump goes ahead and does these $2,000 stimulus checks, it's in the word stimulus, right? And potential QE starting. So if you look at the positive catalysts in terms of liquidity, there's a lot of them. And we know what Bitcoin moves off mostly is obviously liquidity and maybe tech stocks. That's kind of, Bitcoin follows the NASDAQ. It follows global liquidity. It can be somewhat inverse to gold. So we have potential signals for a risk-on period in 2026. But again, for me, the technicals are more important, because everyone thought in January of 2025, Trump getting in would skyrocket crypto. That was the sentiment. That was the catalyst. But the charts are actually saying something different. So this all comes down to that debate. How much emphasis do you put on the technicals versus the fundamentals or news events? And I'm interested in your opinion on that, because for me personally, the more I learn and the further I go in my crypto journey, I've been in crypto since I was 13. Now I'm 21. The more I go into the crypto journey, the more I realize that technicals matter more than what most people think.
Yes, absolutely. Quick shout out to Chris. Thank you so much for the super sticker, my friend. Greatly appreciated, guys. I agree with you. There is a lot of potential catalysts, and this is another one of those potential scenarios I talked about for next year. Another possibility would be, the next 3 or 4 months just being downward pressure. And hear me out on this. I think that we could reach the 200 week a little bit faster than people think, like you were saying. And one of the reasons is because I do think that, we're not far from the make or break point for strategy, for example, to have to start offloading some of their holdings, right, for Bitcoin. Now, if that happens, I think that's going to be a snowball effect. Once people see, MicroStrategy or strategy starting to have to sell off some of their Bitcoin, I don't think it'll be small amounts. And I don't think they're going to sell all of their Bitcoin, but I do think they're going to have to sell enough to take some of their profits off the table. And that's going to cause other people to start panic selling, I think, right? It could even cause other people putting it in their treasuries to start selling as well. I think we could really see some real selling pressure on Bitcoin if that happens. And I think that would be a quick way to rip that Band-Aid off and get us down to that 200 week a lot faster than people are anticipating. Probably in the first half of next year. And then, like you were saying, with a new Fed chair coming in, I know that Trump's calling for like a total of 1% in terms of rates. Like he wants like 3 or 4 points cut off right away and stuff. And that's not going to happen. but that's what he's calling for, right? We did see Hassat the other day mention that he believes that rate cuts should be done slowly and strategically, not just let's just slash them, because that would cause inflation to come roaring back, right? In my opinion. Um, but I think that that's the thing. We could have a red first half of next year, followed by potential maybe closing out the year looking bullish because all of the effects of these causes start to kick in, right? Like you said, stimulus, the $2,000 per American citizen, the money printer turns on. And a lot of people are confusing the end of quantitative tightening with the beginning of quantitative easing as well. The end of one does not necessarily mean the beginning of another.
Yep, 100%. We're seeing that. Everyone's saying that, right? Everyone thinks the end of QT means instant money printing. But no, they're just ending the tightening. They're not easing yet. But you mention a really key point, which is inflation. And when you list out all these potential catalysts for 2026, to me, there's big warning signs for potential inflation if all of these things come out. And then that's got the whole question of, can you have a parabolic alt season if inflation is spiraling out of control? Because we know one of the recipes for an alt season is retail, right? And you need consumer sentiment, and you need retail who have disposable income. And if retail are tapped out, they've got no funds because of inflation, because they can't afford to have free cash because of expenses. How are you going to have this huge influx of retail? So it's all about striking the balance. We don't want too much easing and too much money printing and all of this, because if that happens, then that just means gold's probably going to keep going up, and you're probably just going to continue to have inflation and a risk off sentiment. But if we have a nice balance of it, then for sure you're going to have small businesses thriving. You're going to have retail with a bit more money in their pocket, which is one of the main things we look for in an alt season. So it's all about striking the balance. Too much in one direction is just going to cause inflation, and then they're going to potentially have to hike rates, which no one's thinking about that in the future, right? So it's all about a balance, and I think we might get it at some point in 2026. I'm watching the Russell 2000 very closely. I don't know if I mentioned that on the last show we did, but it is showing some positive signs that it wants to make a move to the upside, and that's your small business index essentially, less tech weighted, and I'm sure most people in the audience know, but that is highly correlated with Total 3, which is your altcoin index. And it really all comes down to how rate sensitive the Russell 2000 is and how rate sensitive crypto is. They go hand in hand. But what's interesting is the Russell 2000 right now is right on the edge of making a new high. But if you go and look at crypto, it hasn't aligned. And for the vast majority of the last 3 or 4 years, these two charts, you can pretty much put them over each other and they are identical. But right now, crypto is almost decoupling from it. So it begs the question, is something intrinsic going on to crypto that is causing this dump? And maybe people point to the liquidation event. Maybe there was something behind that. I don't know. I'm not an insider, but that was very suspicious. But it almost seems like something intrinsic with crypto. You mentioned Michael Saylor, MicroStrategy. I don't know if something is going on behind the scenes that we're missing, but I'll tell you, I was just having a conversation with someone earlier. This cycle, we haven't really had any major crypto FUD events. We've had macro FUD events and things like that, but we haven't really had like a major exchange go bankrupt. We haven't really had a stable coin completely collapse or decouple. Last bull run or last few years, we had Celsius, we had FTX, we had, I remember USDT, USDC, loads of these stable coins decoupled. Terra Luna stable coin just went to zero. So we haven't really had anything like that this cycle, right? Is something happening behind the scenes? And that is a bit, conspiracy theory, but this market's weird right now. It's not moving with the Russell 2000 like it has been for the last 4 years or so.
Well, let's go down that rabbit hole a little bit there with the whole conspiracy theory part of it. And I have to say that I have been of the mindset I'm not really that guy that sits there all the time on the channel and harps on everything that, if I'm wrong about a call, it must be market manipulation. But I have to be honest, I don't like we did see a lot of market manipulation in 2021 cycle, but I don't think to this blatant degree that we're seeing right now. I mean, Lark Davis brought up a very good point a couple of days ago on X. He said, October 10th, we had that massive liquidation, which in itself seemed kind of suspicious. Then it got blamed on partly on like uh, Binance not using a proper oracle and liquidating their customers, blah 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 blah. Right. Well, Lark says so they dumped the market, and then Charles Schwab, Vanguard, and the Bank of America all roll out crypto options to their customers the same week that Bitcoin seems to have found a local bottom. Is that a coincidence? Or was this manufactured?
Yeah,
Because
it's sus.
because to be honest with you, retail for the most part has not really been here. What we've mainly seen, especially in the large caps, is nothing more than capital rotation. We're not seeing new money coming into the space. We're seeing the spot Solana and XRP ETFs with all of these inflows, but at the same time, we're seeing Bitcoin and Ethereum ETFs with outflows. So it's clear that it's just capital rotating from one hand to the other here. And yes, the Coin Market Cap app hit what 20 something in like January, but usually it's like top 5, right? So is that I don't know, like there's so many different kind of, little, I don't want to say excuses, but is the fact that there are millions of meme coins now, even though most of those, I'd probably say 70% of them either rugged or died. So there's not really any capital in them, right? We're not seeing the capital rotate into the NFT market like we did in 2021. So that's not draining liquidity from crypto. So, like, what could the possible reason be that retail, just for the most part, in bulk, didn't show up yet?
I think one of my theories is that AI has overshadowed crypto in a way. If you look at the stock market, AI is in a massive bull market and everyone's talking about a bubble. I personally don't think it's a bubble for AI. If you look at some of the P ratios of the likes of Meta, Nvidia, some of these big names, they're trading on the same level as something like Costco. I mean, they're not crazy overvalued by any means. Yes, they're going to have corrections along the way, but I think they're going a lot higher. And they've already done 10, 20Xs, some of these companies in the last few years. And we're talking big companies here. So I think what's happened is people are kind of thinking, why do I need to invest in crypto when these AI stocks just keep going up? Crypto's higher risk and lower reward, right? Over the last few years than some of these tech stocks. If you look at how Nvidia's performed, Palantir, some of these big names, they've outperformed pretty much most cryptos, maybe excluding Bitcoin, right, in the last couple of years. So I think that is one reason that a lot of people aren't really looking at is maybe this cycle has just been the AI cycle. And maybe if AI wasn't so hot as it is right now, maybe it would have been the true crypto adoption phase. But I just think all the investment, all the money, all the talk, all the hype, it's in AI right now, and particularly AI stocks. So I think that's one reason. The other reason, obviously, retail, they've just not been in a good place. If you look at some of the consumer sentiment surveys and stuff, they've hit record lows. So retail are tapped out. They're not doing that great. But then with that said, I don't know if you saw the Black Friday data. That came out pretty strong. I think it came out as one of the best sales ever, like in terms of revenue for Black Friday, globally or in the US, one of these things. So it's a bit conflicting. Like you've got the stock market and tech stocks at all-time highs, but then alts are just not doing anything. So I've given you some kind of maybe less obvious reasons and stuff, but I think one clear reason is product market fit of altcoins. It makes clear sense to people, just normal people and walking around the street. I think most people understand to some degree Bitcoin is this digital store of value. They get it, right? Just like gold, Bitcoin's some store of value. Then you try and explain what's Ethereum, what's Solana, what's the XRP, what's that. You lose them. And they just don't understand most of these things. And I think even people in crypto, people who've been in crypto for 5 years, 10 years, we're still trying to figure out the true purpose of some of these blockchains. Is it going to be for payments? Is it going to be for gaming? You've seen big blockchains pivot, right? AVAX tried to make a big pivot into gaming. It hasn't really succeeded so far. So I think that's another big thing is Bitcoin's got a clear purpose, clear product market fit. Altcoins, maybe they're still so early. We don't even truly know the use cases yet for some of these things.
I think a lot of people could be waiting to see which, not so different than the stock market back in the late 90s, which crypto projects are actually going to succeed. Because, when we had the stock market boom, it was very similar. I mean, there was a lot of stocks and only some made it, right? And that's why it bothers me when people say like 99% of cryptos are going to go to zero. I had a talk with another YouTuber friend of mine, Max, about this a couple of days ago, and it just doesn't make sense to me when people say that 99, unless you're referring to meme coins. Okay, I agree with you there, right? But if you're telling me that some Web3 gaming project, I don't know, pick any random one, Superverse, whatever, right, is going to go to zero because it doesn't have MiCA compliance or something, and a decentralized finance play does. It doesn't make sense to me for people to say that kind of thing. Like a Web3 gaming project's not going to zero simply because decentralized finance exists or layer ones exist. You know what I'm saying? Like it's kind of like saying that, like I said with Max, my argument was that's like saying Taco Bell's going to go under because Subway makes better subs. Like they're different businesses doing different things. It doesn't make sense. They're not even competing with each other, right? There will be winners and losers in each narrative, right? You could say that maybe 99% of the projects per narrative will go under, but that still leaves a whole lot of projects, given the fact that there's millions of projects in each narrative, that will flourish and succeed and still be around and exist, right?
100%. I mean, look at the top 10 from 2017, 2021, and 2025. There's still, or top 20, there's still a lot of the same names there, like Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP, Solana's still up there, Cardano's still somewhere, Bitcoin Cash, Litecoin, they're still all amongst the top 30, top 20, whatever. Which in a way, that shows some of these projects are here to stay, but at the same time, it maybe shows the lack of progress in the space in a way. If those same projects are still up there, like what's been the last recent layer one that's like really caught everyone off guard and just gone straight up to the very top? I mean, some would say Sui, but even Sui went to a fraction of what the likes of Solana, Cardano, even Polkadot went to, right? So there hasn't been any major breakthrough project since maybe Solana, right? Or correct me if I'm wrong, I can't think of, maybe Hyperliquid, but then that's a DEX play. It's not the same. So it's just been a bit strange, the lack of new projects. I mean, 2021, there was a new project every week that was flying to the top of the rankings, whereas now it just feels like maybe there has been a bit of a slowdown in the overall progress of blockchain technology, or maybe just the things we currently have are good enough and we don't need any new chains. But what do you think about that?
Well, you do see a lot of companies now starting to try to create different types of layer ones, like BlockDAG and stuff like that. You've got like Caspa, stuff like that, and Caspa did really, really well. And I'm surprised I know it lost momentum, and I'm surprised it hasn't got another leg up yet. I still think Caspa can do big things. I hope it doesn't end up becoming the next like Cadena or something like that. But I agree with you that there has been, just off the top of my head, I mean, don't get me wrong, the newer projects that launched in this cycle, I really do like a lot of them. And I do have my eyes on newer ones like Asteer and XPL, for example, right? I think they could do
Right.
things. But yeah, outside of that, I mean, it's been underwhelming. I expected more out of projects like Walrus, for example.
Hmm.
Um, Wormhole. I expected more out of these types of projects, but so far, even Pith, in my opinion, has massively underperformed what it should have and should still do. I mean, for me, it's got to be the second best Oracle behind Chainlink. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned XPL there, and you look at the backing of XPL, big backers. You look at the chain activity; it's one of the top in terms of TVL and loads of these different things. Um, you look at the fact Peter Thiel personally invested into it, and yet the chart has just been in a downtrend pretty much since inception. And I thought I was getting close to the bottom, buying it in the mid 20s, and it's gone down to 17 cents now, right? I wasn't jumping in at the launch, but I thought mid 20s, high 20s, that was like getting to the bottom, but it just kept on going down, right? And I mean, I've been looking at XPL, and it's just in this constant downtrend essentially. I can maybe just share my chart just to show you exactly what I'm um, referring to here. If I just click share screen, um, I mean, I'm looking at it on the 4 hour here, and it's just like constantly kind of making lower
that
highs,
that's gonna
lower
pop.
lows. When that breaks, it's going to be crazy. It's going to pump in. It's going to just give a god candle, I think, right? But it's a big question of when will it break, because this has just been in a constant downtrend for a very long period of time. And had this have launched, let's just say in 2021, like let's just say November 2021 or April 2021, I mean, this thing would have just gone straight up. It would have just been like a god candle straight up to 50 billion market cap, maybe 30 billion market cap. But this thing is sat here at a 300 million market cap, down 90% since 2 months ago, since launch. So it's one of those things. Why is that? Why is the money not flowing into it? Um, and I don't really know the answer sometimes. I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, why is this thing so cheap? And I think this with a lot of projects. Say is another one which just constantly goes down and yet has great fundamentals to it, But it's just it's a weird scenario right now. And all I can think is it ties into some of the things we were saying earlier about the fundamentals are still strong, but the technicals are weak. And the thing with retail not having too much money to invest, rates being high the way they've been for a while, the money just isn't finding its way to crypto. But maybe eventually it will be. I mean, what do you think about the whole Trump argument that people make? People say that Trump is actually worse for crypto. I kind of don't have too much of an opinion on it, but people say because of Trump's involvement with his whole meme coin and World Liberty Finance and all this stuff, that's worse for crypto. At least when at least when the Democrats were in, we had something to complain about with their policy towards crypto, right? Because you had Gary Gensler always trying to destroy everything. At least you had a reason to like rebel, right? To hold crypto and go against the system. Whereas now it's almost become establishment, right? You've got the big boys involved. You've got Trump involved. You've got Larry Fink. You've got all these big players involved now. People almost think that has plagued the space, but it's one of those. It's a theory. We don't have the actual maybe concrete data to prove it.
Well, I think it's a lose-lose argument for anybody who's making that. I don't really think there's a win in that scenario. We've got Trump, who All we've heard is how great things are going to be for crypto from him, from his son. I mean, who was it? The crypto Caesar there that he has. Bascent came out. What was it? Yesterday or the day before, saying that the what was he saying? He was just more positive stuff about crypto, and it's it's gonna be big, and I'm at a point now with the Trump administration where I'm tired of hearing about how great things are going to be, and show me in my portfolio how great things are going to be instead of just telling me on the internet, right? And I don't like the fact that Trump has a meme coin and stuff like that, but I wouldn't argue to take away his or anybody's right, to do that. At the same time, it's a decentralized space. Well, it should be, and I believe it should stay that way. But I think he should have just simply known better, and it's not ethical. But then there's this, you got the Biden administration. People have short memories, right? And things were no better. They were definitely, in my opinion, worse. I mean, we just went through like 5 years of hell with the Biden administration, and I would not give up what we have now for what we had then. I mean, then it was every other day there's a new lawsuit. Every other day there's Maxine Waters, and there's new anti-crypto armies being created, and it was absolutely absurd, right? The abuse, weaponizing departments of the government to come after the space, it's just, I think it was worse, and I think that people have a more of a "what have you done for me lately" mindset. A recency bias in crypto is a very, very real thing. It takes me back to the last bull run. All I see is people online saying this cycle is so much harder than the 2021 cycle. If you go back and look at Bitcoin's chart for the last 12 months, from November 2020 to November 2021, there was 15 drops that ranged between 11% to almost 50%. 15. But people forgot all those drops because they ended up walking away from it for the most part with euphoric blow off top at the end, right? So all the bad stuff just kind of disappears, right? It's not easier. It's the same. But with this cycle, again, I can't help but think about how it, and I part of me thinks Trump is part of it, and his World Liberty Financial. I think that these markets are being suppressed. I think that the powers that be are strong enough and they wield a big enough financial weapon, to break the 4-year cycle, if not just temporarily. Because this is the first asset class in the history of the planet that I know of that general retail has front run the incumbents. And how do you reverse that? Make them think it's over, get them out, crash it, and then accumulate. And one could argue that Bitcoin is very quickly becoming a centralized project, right? With all of the big money holding so much of it. You've got treasury companies putting it on their balance sheets. Michael Saylor alone Strategy owns what, 600,000 and 640,000 Bitcoin or something like that. That's like, what is that, like 5% of the supply or something? Circulating supply. I can't remember the exact number, but that's not centralized anymore. He could affect the price on a very large scale if he wanted to.
Yeah, like the fundamental technology remains decentralized, but the holder base and the way it moves is for sure becoming more centralized. And there's a small group of people, who knows how many, maybe 5 people, maybe 10 people, who, if they want, they can fully move the price up or down. You want to crash it 10, 20%, they can do that. Who knows who those people are? Maybe CZ, maybe Trump, maybe there's a few of them, right? Guy behind. Who'd you say?
Wintermute.
Yeah, maybe the people behind Wintermute. Maybe people behind BlackRock. Who knows? But for sure, there's a small group of people who absolutely can determine the way this market goes. And the key thing is, these players, they don't think how we think as retail. We think in like hours, days, weeks. That's the time frame we're looking at. These people might be thinking decades into the future. And that's why when people say, oh, Trump wouldn't allow us to go down, he wants a bull run, I just think to myself, that is probably one of the most naive and not well thought out viewpoints I've ever heard in my life. Just think about it. It might actually be the case that he wants it to go down in the short term so that long term it can go up because he wants to buy more. So did that never cross anyone's mind that they might want to crash it so the prices go down and then they can buy it back at a cheaper price and load up way more? Two, I mean, these guys might make way more money shorting the market, right? Like we don't know what's going on. So these people think in long-term timeframes, and to think like Trump wouldn't allow it to ever go down because he holds crypto, I just think it's naive. Like, yes, in the long run, he wants it to go up, like he wants all markets to go up. But if Trump only ever wanted the markets to go up only, he wouldn't have done the whole tariff thing because that absolutely destroyed the markets. So I think they're thinking very strategically about what they do. They don't mind if there's crashes along the way, because long term, many years into the future, they know it's going to be way higher. And if you can crash it now and buy way more of the supply, why not do that? That's kind of, I'm just thinking, if I was in his position, what would I be thinking?
Yeah.
I wouldn't always just have this up only mindset. I'd be thinking a lot more deeply than that.
I was talking about that. We have lives over on our Patreon, and I was talking about that with everybody, and I was saying that people with short-term mindsets, you have two types of retail investors in this space: people who are trying to get rich quick, and people who are trying to build true financial freedom for themselves for the future, right? The people who are trying to get rich quick are looking at their portfolio every 2 hours. They're freaking out because the price isn't going up tomorrow. Trump and, Michael Saylor and Tom Lee and all these other people, they're playing chess while you're playing checkers, right? Like you just said, they're trying to build 100 billion, if not the first $1 trillion company is what they're trying to do. They're not worried about looking at their port. Do you think that Tom Lee looks at his portfolio every single day about what the current valuation of their Ethereum holdings are every 2 hours? Absolutely not, right? They don't care. They just keep buying more, shaking retail out. They don't care. It's actually a bonus if retail sells them at lower prices, right? So yeah, I've been talking about that over the last week or so. That's exactly it. The big money's playing chess, long-term chess, to make true wealth for the long run, and the average retail investor is playing checkers, right? You can only do one thing, in my opinion. You can do one thing, and it's not financial advice, guys, but you can buy projects that you believe in, you have conviction in, do your research, accumulate, and hold on for dear life. Put your pennies where they put their dollars. That's all you can do, right?
Yeah, people just always think on way too much of a short-term time horizon, and 90 what percentage of traders lose money? Is it 95%, 99%, something like that? It's the vast majority. Whereas if you just simply buy Bitcoin, I'm not going to say every week because I think that is maybe oversimplified. Like, just buy Bitcoin when it hits the 200-week moving average. Just do that.
Yeah.
I know some people like to just buy it every week. If that's what you want to do, fine. But I would say you can take it one step further, and then it's a bit more profitable. Only buy Bitcoin when it hits the 200-week moving average, or you can say only buy Bitcoin when the fear and greed is in extreme fear. Those are your only parameters to buy Bitcoin. Because if you just say every week, then you'd be buying Bitcoin at 126K when it's in extreme greed or whatever, right? It doesn't really make sense to do that. So I don't think you should be doing that because that's not necessarily sensible investing. But just buy whenever there's fear. If you just did that, I guarantee most people in this space would be way more profitable if they just did that than dabbling in all these different aspects that they do. Unless, like I sometimes say, if you are in a group, if you are, learning from people who are doing this as a day job, who are doing this literally as a way of making money. Because if you're trying to do a 9 to 5, you got a family, and you're trying to trade altcoins and all of this at the same time, the odds are just against you. You might as well just keep buying Bitcoin. Maybe learn. I'm not saying don't learn trading. I'm not saying don't learn these things, but you're much better off just buying Bitcoin. And then if you could afford it, or if you have the time, then maybe join a group or listen to, a channel like myself or yours or Caesar or other reputable people in the space. Then that way you're going to fast track your way to understanding the market and success. But I just see so many people waste so much time trying to trade on the minute, on the 5 minute, on the
Yeah.
hourly. And like, man, if you just keep building your business up or whatever you're doing, trying to get a raise at your job, and then just keep deploying money into Bitcoin whenever there's fear, in 5 years, you'll be retired, most likely. But with this trading, the odds are against you. Most people lose everything, right? And I don't know how long it takes them, but usually it's a few weeks. They blow the account.
Yeah, like I said, I usually give people an 8-year horizon. I usually say, you should use your mindset should be 2 full cycles, right? I agree with that. It's patience, and a lot of people, that's the biggest problem. A lot of people just don't have that key factor, patience. If crypto's not pumping when they want it to, they say, well, I need it to pump now because of bills and life and this and everything. Well, you shouldn't need it to pump because of bills. That means you're putting too much money in the market, first of all. And second of all, the market's going to perform at its own pace. There's nothing you can do about it, right? Nothing. In terms of learning how to trade, like we have a trading group over on our Patreon, and I always tell people, if you want to learn how to trade, if you've got extra time on your hands and you want to learn a skill like that, jump over to our trading group and put it into demo mode and just go through the trades that we post there. We post 4 trades every day, and you just go through those trades for practice without putting your own capital at risk. You can use monopoly money over on BTCC, right? And just go to town and learn how to trade without losing money, right? Real firsthand experience, and because it takes time. It does take time.
Yeah, it's probably gonna take to master it 12, 16 hours every day for 5 years,
Mhm.
4 years, something like that. And then if you're only doing a few hours a day, it might take 10 years, right? So that's one of the things. If you're in a group, if you're following the lead from someone who's doing this for a living, then you are more likely to fast track your route to success than if you're just trying to do it all on your own. Because even for me, I find like being in a group, it allows me to get other opinions instantly. And
Yeah.
like you have a bunch of people doing this for a living all in one space, then that mind share is accelerating your progress. But man, like it's going to take time for people to be able to do this 24/7, to be able to do this like as a living. And that's why I say your best bet is probably just to keep buying Bitcoin, learn trading on the side, but don't start dabbling into it unless you've proven yourself, right? Because it's brutal out there, man. And I know people, they're working a regular job, they've got a family, and they're trying to do trading at the same time in front of all those things. Like while they're at work, they've got a trade open on their phone. And like for me, I need 5 screens. I need a fully focus. It's super stressful. I can't even have like music on. I can't even have like anyone near me. I have to just zone out.
Yeah.
And it's not a nice environment. It's like fully focused work mode essentially. So I don't know how people do that. They're working in their job, they're doing all these different things at once, and they've got a trade open like a scalp or whatever.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So speaking of, I'm not going to ask you to give away anything that you're doing over on your Patreon or Discord. I know you have a private VIP community, but without outside of that, what projects are you looking at right now that you like?
So I'm still a big fan of XPL, even though, like I said earlier, I de-risked out of altcoins. I'm still trading them, so I'm not in long-term spot positions right now apart from Bitcoin alone. But I am still looking at altcoin trade setups, and XBL, the one I mentioned earlier, and I pulled up the chart as well. I'm just waiting for that to show some sign of a breakout, because once it does, I do believe we're going to see a really nice rally for XPL, because it's just been suppressed so much. So that's one that price action looks terrible for it. I'm not going to deny that. But once it breaks out, once it gets that move, it is going to be some sort of insane breakout. I'm calling it, because I've seen these types of things play out before, where a coin just goes straight down, straight down, straight down, and then all of a sudden, just like out of nowhere, you get that breakout move. And I'll just share my screen again for anyone who missed the analysis earlier. But it's just constantly down, and all of a sudden you're going to get that move where it breaks this resistance it's been in now for actually since October. Guys, it's almost Christmas, right? It's been in this downtrend since October. Eventually, this is going to break.
You have your enough touches too. I often like to say that I like to see at least 3 touches at the top trend line before I see a breakout, and you've definitely got your touches in. So yeah, way more than enough. I agree with you. I think that XPL is going to have a pop. It's like a beach ball underwater right now.
You've got maybe 10 touches on separate 4-hour candles, 12 maybe, something like that. So that's for sure a huge resistance line. Every time we hit it, we're rejecting. Once you push past that, I think you're going to get a big move. Like I said earlier, it's backed by Peter Thiel. It's big in the stablecoin space. I think stablecoins are here to stay. And if you tune in to CNBC, Bloomberg, these TV channels that talk about markets, whenever they talk about crypto, it's always stablecoins. You don't really hear them talk much about anything else other than Bitcoin and stablecoins. Everything else, gaming, NFTs, to them, it's all just dead and no one's really talking about it. I still believe in gaming, but you don't hear about it on mainstream media. So big narratives of stablecoins. It's still here. It's getting bigger and bigger. I heard Cathie Wood actually lowered her Bitcoin target because she believes stablecoins are going to eat into the market share a little bit for Bitcoin. Now, I don't really listen to people like Cathie Wood or Michael Saylor for price targets. That's one area where I just, put my fingers in my ears and don't listen, because they always give these absurd targets. Same with Tom Lee. Did he say 150K by the end of the year or something like that? I didn't hear it, but I heard another crazy target from someone. They told me Tom Lee was giving these insane targets by the year end, and we're almost there now. So we've got a few weeks to almost double in price. But one thing she was saying was stablecoins and the market share is potentially going to eat a little bit into Bitcoin. Now, I don't know if I fully agree with that, but the point is stablecoins are dominating the narrative, and anything that's kind of tying into that stablecoin narrative, I would be looking at, and XPL is a big play. Another one I really like is Tau, because of the AI trend. AI is going nowhere. It's continuing to expand in terms of its market share of the S&P 500. It's getting absurd now, the percentage it makes up. And essentially the S&P 500 has become an AI index now because of how big the Mag 7 has become. So Tau is actually one which has held up somewhat okay, despite most alts being down 90%, 95%. Tau is down 63%, which is more in line with the coins in the top 10, top 20. So I'm quite impressed with how it's held up. And that's one thing I would say as well. I shared with you XPL hasn't held up well at all. So that's kind of going against what I'm about to say. But one thing I like to look at is how well an altcoin has held up during bad times. That is usually a good signal to me. So XPL is the exception, okay? But usually when I'm looking at an altcoin, especially in a bear market, I like to see how well is it held up? How has it performed to Bitcoin? How has it performed to Ethereum? Has it outperformed some of the alts, or has it been much more of a dumpster? So Tau has been one for me which has held up. It has shown that it can stand some form of a mini crypto winter. And that makes me think, when we do get this risk on rally with the market, Tau is going to just skyrocket to $1,000. But I just don't think we're there yet. It's going to take time for this liquidity to reach altcoins. Everyone's talking about QE. Everyone's talking about rate cuts, but it could take 6 months before we really see the bullish effect of those things.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. The tail end of next year, we could see the effect of the cause for the first part of this year. I think another project that's right up there with Bittenser holding up strong is ZBEC. I don't know if you know much about ZBEC, but yeah, it's held up impressively well also. But I mean, they're coming out with bullish stuff every single week. It seems like they're doing spaces all the time on a weekly basis, new partnerships. Apparently, they're ready to put out some sort of a product with Ripple sometime soon. They're going to be ISO 200.2.2 compliant this year, they said as well. So yeah, I really like ZBEC. Good project.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's held up quite well. I've been tracking this one. Unfortunately, I never got an early entry on it. So I kind of, after this massive rally, I was just holding off. Maybe here is actually a decent entry, but like I said, I'm more in kind of a swing trader's mind frame right now than like a buy and hold viewpoint on the market, just because of where Bitcoin is. But yeah, this one's held up pretty well. I mean, when you think about how much alts have dumped, it looks solid. Like structurally, it still looks solid. So
yeah.
I looked a little bit into the fundamentals. The only thing that I was like raising at the time, I think, as a potential red flag was that it wasn't on like super tier 1 exchanges. But maybe there's a reason for that, right? Casper isn't on those, and I've been a fan of Casper, so it's not always a deal breaker. But I was always a fan of this one, and I just never got a good entry, so I kind of beat myself up about it because I did know about it before this massive rally, but for whatever reason, I just never bought in.
We spent that whole bottom accumulation zone down there. My Patreon group spent that whole time accumulating ZBEC, so we that was a massive win for us on that project.
Great stuff.
Yeah. But yeah, which way? All things being said, which direction do you see the market going? Now, again, not going to hold your feet to the fire on it or anything, but just what way are you leaning right now? How the first half of this year is going to play out for you?
So the way I'm seeing things is, since we lost the 50 week, we have to go down to the 200 at some point. That's just my viewpoint on it. That might not play out, and we just freaking skyrocket from here and push past the 50 week again, in which case I'll happily get back into my altcoin positions. But I do think, based off history, when you lose that 50 week SMA, which, if you want to find out exactly where that is, you can just go into indicators, find SMA. And then for the length, you want to go for 50, and you got to put it on the weekly, right? When you lose that, we mentioned it earlier, you typically come down to the 200, sometimes even a bit below it. So that has to be my base case assumption. Now, in the meantime, we can go sideways. I even expect a bounce. I was saying my base case is a move up to that 50 week, which right now is around 102K. Maybe it's slightly lower by the time we get there because it is creeping down. But a lot of the liquidity, if you go on the liquidity heat map, you look at the weekly, it's at 94K. If you look at the 2 week, I believe there's some even at 98K. If this will load. Still 94K. What about the monthly? Let's see. A lot of liquidity around 98K. So there's a lot of liquidity building up around 94 to 98. Therefore, in the short term, I am bullish. So meaning the next few weeks, next couple of months, maybe, I do expect that move up to around the 50-week moving average. It doesn't have to be on the dot, but I have my base case as a rejection, and a further move down probably to that 200 week. Now, I hope it's quick. We can just get it over and done with very quickly. I almost put 2000 week on there. We don't want that. I hope we can get it over and done with, and we can just come down, hit it, and then get off to the races again. And it's not like in 2022 where we really came down below it and we're just fighting for it for a while. I hope it's more like kind of maybe the COVID crash, which is a weird comparison because that was an anomaly. Or maybe even something like what happened here in 2018. We came right down to it and we got a bounce. And then the whole pandemic thing happened, and that's what dump does. So you could maybe say if we didn't have the whole C19 thing, we could have just kept on bouncing here and just absolutely skyrocketed to new all-time highs early. But obviously it didn't happen. So it's all just speculation here. But you can see, again, another example coming down to the 200. So I hope, and hope isn't a good word when you're an investor or trader. It's the nemesis word. But I hope we can just get that move done with. It's a quick move down and then we can bounce. But another level I would be looking at, which is a bit higher than the 200 week. So maybe it creeps up by the time we get there, or maybe we don't exactly hit it. But a level I am really looking at as an area of big interest for me is the previous all-time high for Bitcoin, $69,000 to $64,000. That is the region between the two highs. I think at some point Bitcoin is going to come down and it is going to retest that level and maybe flip it for support. If we could do that and get a bounce, that would be a really, really good sign showing that we respect previous all-time highs. The S&P 500 loves to do that. It would show that Bitcoin is a mature asset and it's respecting previous all-time highs. And that to me would be a great sign. But a lot of people I'm talking to are saying, and I don't know if I 100% agree with this, but they're saying if we lose 74, we're going to go an awful lot lower. That's a common phrase I'm hearing when I'm having these voice chats in my Discord. If we lose 74, we're going to go a whole lot lower. We're not just going to stop at 69. But I think that would almost be the Max Payne scenario, is you lose 74 and then everyone thinks it's completely over. We're going to 30K, we're going to 20K, it's done. And then we just go to 69 and then bounce, right? This is all speculation, obviously, but I think something like that could play out.
Well, I agree. Previous cycle all-time highs do tend to be good levels of support, good significant levels to be paying attention to. So I definitely agree that I think all eyes will be on that price range when we get down to that area. So something I know I'll definitely be talking about when the time comes. But I agree with you that I think it could be a strong support level, but I am still slightly leaning towards that 200-week moving average coming down there, because even that, honestly, at the end of the day, is not that bad. By the time we get down there, it's probably going to, what is it, 56,000 right now?
Yeah,
it's probably going to be closer to 58, 59,000. As Bitcoin comes down, it'll continue creeping its way up because, right, as long as Bitcoin is above it, it's going to keep moving up every week, right? So it could continue to creep its way up. So that's not really that much further to fall, to be honest. People that are calling for like $30,000, $25,000 Bitcoin, I think that's a bridge too far.
Yeah, and you know what I noticed was if you do a macro fib from the cycle low to supposedly the cycle high, right? You get a golden pocket there at the same point as the 200 week. Now it is going to move up, like you said, but that could line up really nicely where you come down and you get some form of confluence there. It is interesting though. Typically in a bear market, Bitcoin likes a 786, which is at 40K. But if we assume Bitcoin is a maturing asset, the bear markets aren't going to be as bad, just like the bull markets aren't going to be as good, then maybe there is a bit of a diminishing return to the downside, and maybe we find some support around that golden pocket region instead of the 786. So it's going to be interesting to see. I also want to just mention, because there's always comments saying we're not in a bear market. Even if we go down to 74K, it's still not a bear market. Even if we go down to 50K, it's not a bear market because we were there last year, right? It all depends on your definitions. This is a super key point. because a lot of the time when I'm having arguments with people, we actually have more in agreement than disagreement. It's just a semantics argument. We're arguing against definitions. And I'm saying a bear market is, you know, a downtrend, a continued downtrend for some time. And one signal of that is a break of the 50-week moving average. That to me is a bear market, some form of continued downtrend for a period of time, and you lose the 50-week moving average. That to me is how I would define a bear market. Now, other people might say a bear market is a 50% correction, an 80% correction. Some people might say it's not a bear market until we hit the 200-week moving average. It's not a bear market until we go below 74K. There's all different definitions from people. And that's why I like in the stock market, there's a very clear definition of a bear market and a correction. Correction is a 10% drop. Bear market is considered 20% or more as a drop in the S&P 500. We need some sort of thing for that for crypto, because everyone's going to be arguing, what's a bear market? Are we in one? Are we not in one? Why can't we just have a clear, categorical, black and white definition of what a bear market is? The problem with that is, historically speaking, a crypto or a Bitcoin bear market is a 75 to 85% correction. And I don't think we're going to have another one of those anytime soon. So would you say we're never going to have a bear market again? Or would you just say that the bear markets are going to become more tamed?
I started referring to it as a bear phase just to appease people, right? Because who knows, right? But no, I'm still a believer in liquidity draining from the cycle, or from the asset class, sorry. So I am still a proponent of, I don't think they'll be as aggressive in your blue chips that are seeing that adoption, like your XRPs, your Bitcoins, your Ethereums, your Solanas. As you get those ETFs and stuff, and treasuries done properly, I think that you will see less and less volatility for sure in those bigger caps. But I think as far as the rest of the altcoin market, you're always going to see that 90%, 95% drop in the altcoins. But that's another thing that drives me crazy, is that, you know, this whole cycle conversation. People I'm seeing all over YouTube and X, in one side of people's mouths, they're saying that this time is different, and that's why, you know, the cycles can be different to the upside and stuff. But in the same breath, they're implying that the bear market will be the same. Well, if the cycle's different, the cycle's different as a whole, right? Which, if, like you said, if the top is not as toppy as previous cycles because this time's different, or it's extended, or whatever the case might, the argument is that it's different, well, then theoretically the downside would have to be different too, and not be as long and stuff. And, you know, but again, they're saying this time's different, this time's the same in the same breath.
They're expecting diminishing returns to the upside, but the same returns to the downside, which, look, it could happen, but I give it a very low chance that like 126 is the top and then we go all the way down to 25K. Like, I think that's unlikely. If 126 is the top, then we're probably finding a bottom somewhere between, let's just call it 50K to 70K. Like, somewhere in that region is more likely to be the top. And I think most people agree on that. What's really interesting is, if you look at Polymarket, which a lot of people bash Polymarket, but I actually think they've been quite spot on a lot of things. If you look at the election, it suddenly shifted in the favor of Trump, and they were absolutely spot on. A lot of people weren't seeing that at the time. But if you look at the probabilities for Bitcoin in 2027, or by 2027, by the end of next year, is really interesting. It basically has Bitcoin going below 65K, but also going above 130K. Both of those scenarios are more likely than not. Mm-hmm. So it's not necessarily a question of either or. Both could happen in the same year, which is crazy to think that we might see Bitcoin at 65K, there or thereabouts, early in the year, maybe, and above 130 late in the year. Or it could be the complete other way around. Maybe we're at 130 early in the year, and then we're at 65 late in the year. That's what some people are saying differently to me. I favor more of a dump early on in the year and a rally after that. But which side do you stand on? Do you think we're more likely to have the 130 towards the back end of the year or towards the beginning of the year?
Yeah, I think the back end of the year, I think that a lot of the stuff that's happening the first half of the year is not going to pay dividends until probably Q4 of next year. And I do see some other people out there targeting Q4 as some sort of a rally as well. But yeah, like we talked about earlier, the new chair at the Fed, quantitative easing's probably still going to take maybe 2 more months before that even starts. And then it takes a time for us to start to feel the effects of that starting, right? So that's a few more. That probably leads you into the beginning of Q3 of next year. We're probably into, July by the time we see any sort of effects even starting to kick in. So yeah, that's kind of how I see it. And then we also have other things like the midterms in November, right? The Republicans cannot have the markets in Q3, Q4 of next year being the way they are right now. They don't stand a chance at the midterms in this, as far as the states is concerned, anyways.
Well, on the midterm thing, I find it interesting because I agree with the whole rationale behind they have to have the markets up on the midterms and all of this. But if you do look historically speaking, with Bitcoin anyway, I'm not 100% sure with TradFi how long this trend goes on. But in recent years with Bitcoin, the midterm years are bear markets. 2022, 2018,
Mhm.
2014, I'm pretty sure as well. Like bear markets typically happen during midterm years. So I get why people say, yeah, they need to have markets up for the midterm years. It makes sense because they need to get votes and they'll do whatever they can to try and prop up the economy. But in terms of precedent, there hasn't been a precedent in Bitcoin of midterm years being these super bullish years, which is something which I just put on the side, right? I still think 2026 could be bullish at some point, but I still have it in the back of my mind these post halving years. So the year after the year of the halving. No, the year after. I don't need to say it. Post halving, right? People understand what I'm saying. 2 years after the halving, those years are typically bear markets, right?
Yeah, it's really really difficult. Like you got to be careful who you listen to, and I've found that a lot of the content creators and YouTubers, people on X that have come out, most of them haven't even been through a full cycle before, right? And they're making these crazy calls, and it reminds me of 2021 cycle where all of the largest content, I'll never forget it, all the largest content creators out there were calling for a bigger year in 2022 than in 2021. I'll never forget, like $10 Cardano and like 100 and whatever $1,000 Bitcoin. I think I even heard someone say like a $500,000 Bitcoin in
I think
2021.
Ben Cowan, I'm pretty sure, was one of the big proponents behind super cycle 2022 being an up year for Bitcoin at the time.
Yeah.
Obviously, he was wrong. We're all wrong at times, but people try and pin him as like the saint of crypto. But I think most people last cycle thought that it was going to continue. I personally didn't. I was selling in April 2021. I was selling a bunch of my alts because it was just overextended. Everything was I wasn't even that smart back then. Like I've upped my game a lot since then. I was like maybe 15, 16, 17 years old during like 2019 to 2021. So I wasn't like this super advanced trader, but I could read an RSI. I looked
Yeah.
at the RSI and it was like freaking off the scale in April. It was crazy. So how are people seeing that and thinking like we're going way higher than 64K? So I was selling a bunch of the memes and stuff back then. But yeah, even in November 2021, we went back up. I was a little bit less out of the market then. I was in a few plays. But people were like, making out, it was going to keep going on for months and months and months, and it just never happened. And people are saying the same thing now about this cycle, and maybe this time is different, but they always say that every single a broken clock is right twice a day. If you keep saying this time is different, this time is different, this time is different, eventually, maybe after the 15th time you say that, this time will actually be different. But we've got to go with probabilities. We don't know certainties here. And I always say, I'm not trying to be super predictive with things. I'm more a reactionist. I'm more reactionary to what I see. If you lose a moving average, I react. If an event happens, I react. I'm not trying to know everything years in advance because no one knows that. But I will react to what the data presents.
Well, like you said, we're all wrong sometimes. Nobody has 1,000% batting average. Nobody out there. If anybody says that they do, stop following them immediately because they're full of it, right? Like nobody does. I have my misses, but I find that, I think that a lot of the bigger channels, like you had said, Ben Cowan, like your Bit Boys, your Wendy O's, they were all calling for higher. I remember specifically also in the bottom of this bear market when Bitcoin was $15,000. I'll never forget watching Wendy O tell her subscribers on YouTube to sell everything at 15K because we were going down to 9 and then buy back in at 9. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me right now? Like, that's a bold proclamation to be making, right? Like, and then everybody has to buy back in at like 21, 22 because you told them to sell at 15, right? Like, and I guess that's why
I've never listened to a single one of her videos. That's crazy. Like, how can you say at 15K that you should sell? Like, maybe you might even think we're going a bit lower. Maybe because I was thinking maybe 13 could be the bottom, but I was buying like a maniac at 15K. Like I was buying like there's no tomorrow. Yes, I thought maybe we could come down to 13. There's actually a video on my channel. Crypto's aged me, by the way, in the last few years. I look like a 10-year-old on the video. But I was saying that 15K to me is a great buy zone, and I'm going to be loading up as much as I can. Could we go down to 13? I said yes, there's a solid chance, maybe 50-50. But I'm buying at 15. And because of that, my average on Bitcoin is like 15, 16K because I deployed all my capital at that region after the FTX collapse. But you're absolutely right. There was people back then saying, sell your Bitcoin. We're going to 10K. We're going to 3K. I think, was it Capo? Someone, Crypto Capo or someone was saying 3K. Like, man, be careful who you listen to. That's what I'm going to say. Be careful who you listen to. Learn how to read a chart. Learn how to look at moving averages and RSIs and fibs. And you'll be able to suss some people out instantly because people say stuff just to get clicks. They don't even hold crypto, some of these people. They're just saying things to try and get the clicks.
I was just going to say that you have to ask yourself why, the biggest channels, whether they got 1 million subscribers or 500,000 subscribers, and they're saying, sell 15K Bitcoin to buy in lower, or Bitcoin's going higher when it's at a top, when the RSI has been riding 95 for 3 months straight or something like that, right? You have to wonder, they have all those subscribers because they're telling you what makes you click on their video. They're telling you what you want to hear. They're not telling you what they think is actually going to happen. They're telling you what is going to get you to come back and watch their stuff over and over and over, right? And I find that, I get some people that get mad at me because I won't tell them. I get people who try to negotiate with me. They'll give me like, can you give me a price target on this? Like, what will be a good exit price point? I'll tell them. And I say, then they'll just start going through all of these, like I told you before, the yeah buts. Yeah, but what if this happens? And what if that happens? Could it go higher if this? Like, they're trying to negotiate a higher. You understand that if I say it could go higher, it doesn't mean it's going to go higher, right? Like,
right. Yeah, it's insane, man. I mean, I honestly think, and this might be again another conspiracy theorist, tinfoil hat type of thing, but I actually think that some of the crypto YouTubers might be controlled, like controlled opposition in a way. Like they genuinely might be doing the market makers favors. Like they might just call one of them up and say, make a FUD video or make on a specific coin, or pump this coin or dump that coin, you know? And like, who knows? Some of these guys might have close connections, some of these big YouTubers with the Wintermutes, the Binances, and they might be being propped up by these big institutions and basically telling retail what they want to hear. I mean, think about retail investors. Where do they get most of their information from? It is YouTube. It is crypto Twitter, right? Or X. That's where they get their information from. So it would not surprise me in the slightest if some of these big names, I'm not saying all of them, but some of them are actually working for the exchanges, working for the market makers. Maybe they've got backhand deals. I don't know, but it really wouldn't surprise me if that's the case. Because put yourself in the shoes of a market maker or a big exchange. You'd probably do it if you were them, right? I mean, I wouldn't because I try to have moral intentions. But if I had no moral intentions and my goal was purely just to manipulate the markets, I would be hiring all these influencers, getting them to do these types of videos whenever it suits me. And then they just manipulate the market even more.
Well, for sure. All they have to do is decide that they want to make, they want to, let's say, put in a massive short on Ethereum, right? So let's get 2 or 3 of the biggest YouTubers out there, or big ones, to start putting all over their YouTube channel and on X that Ethereum is going to have a massive pump. Put in along, right? Everybody starts longing it because these big YouTubers are telling them that it's going up. And what do? They put in a short and they liquidate, right? Then they crash it and they liquidate.
Yep.
They make money. Everyone else loses money. And, the YouTuber says,
it's all orchestrated. It's all orchestrated for sure. Like, there's way more manipulation than I'll ever know. I'm just a regular guy who happened to be decent at trading and crypto. But for sure, there's conversations going on between some of these big players that we could never imagine maybe what they're talking about. I mean, just have to listen to some of the things people say. Banana zone, like we're just going to go up only. And all these terms that people make, like it's for sure. It's not, because these aren't dumb people. Like some of these guys, they know how to talk. They're not stupid. But when you hear some of the theories they have of like 200K by the end of this month, we're at 89K now, 200K by the end of this month. There's big players saying that with big followings. Like,
that's like
how do they say that?
That's like $2 trillion added to Bitcoin's market cap in a month.
Well, it's like what I was saying earlier, right? Like Tom Lee, I don't want to say it exactly because I didn't hear him say it, but someone who I know who's close in my circle was telling me that Tom Lee was giving these crazy targets just like a week ago on TV by the end of the year for Bitcoin, like 150 or something by the end of the year. Well, we're at 89 now. Like, how are we going to do that type of move? Maybe if you say we go to 100K by the end of the year, then, we can at least have a conversation. But 150 or whatever he was saying, like, how do these people sit there and say that with straight faces? And by the way, Michael Saylor, Tom Lee, I have respect for these guys because they are pro crypto and all of this, but I just look, they've got to sell Bitcoin. They've got to sell Ethereum to people. That's their job. They're marketers in a way. They go onto TV and they need to push out Bitcoin and Ethereum to the masses. How do you do that? You sell a dream. You say in a couple months, you'll have millions. Probably. They don't say that directly, but Bitcoin will double by the end of the year, right? Yeah. That is selling a dream to people, and that's what brings people into the space. So I'm not hating on them for doing that, because obviously it's good for us holders of the space, but there's definitely a lot of disingenuine people and some of these comments people make, I just really scratch my head at, because I just don't know how anyone believes them. Some of the targets, $20 Casper was another one people were giving all year, right? One big YouTuber in the Casper community was saying Casper will hit $20 by the end of the year, every video. And people believe that.
Wow. Because it got clicks, right? That's the thing.
Exactly. Sells a dream. You get members.
Yeah. It says, Soul wants me to ask you about Swiftcoin. What are your thoughts on Swiftcoin?
So I've seen this comment's been up for a while, so I'll have to check it out. But I don't hold any. Like I said earlier, I'm only in Bitcoin right now and stables until I see more confirmation of where we're heading.
It's
Swift,
SWFTC is the ticker.
SWFT. Okay, Swift coin. It's on Coinbase, right? This one?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's on Coinbase, which is good. You have to have some connections or some money to get on Coinbase, so that's usually a good sign. 50 million market cap,
They have
$1 million volume.
they have a lending protocol, and they have an all-chain bridge DEX, like more of a swap, really. And they have an AI play as well. I like them as a project, but they have not held up good against the market.
Right. And that's one of the things is there's a lot of good projects out there. XPL is another one, right? But price action has been pretty brutal for a lot of these coins. So I'll take a deeper look at it. I haven't been researching alts as much in the last month just because of where the market's been going. But once, like I said earlier, once one of my parameters is hit, either a break above the 50 week or we come back to the 200 week, I'm going to be jumping into to a lot of other alt positions to the ones I was currently in, previously in. But in terms of lending and borrowing, I'll give you guys a project to look into. Maybe your community already knows about it, but Morpho. This is one which I made some nice gains on this cycle, and we called it really early on before it rallied. But this has held up well, to be quite honest with you. I mean, if you look at the chart,
Yeah.
just looks like a stable coin, right? But this one's on Binance and Coinbase. It's the de facto borrowing and lending platform on Coinbase. So the loans within Coinbase are going through Morpho. So I see this one doing really big things when the time is right. So I would recommend people add this to their watch list. Not saying to invest in it, but just do some research on it. If you can get it at the right time, this would be a project in the borrowing and lending sector, which I genuinely think could hit like a 10 billion market cap long term.
Yeah, my favorite narrative in crypto is decentralized finance. I mean, for a lot of reasons. I mean, you have the current administration adopting, that's what they're focused on is decentralized finance. I mean, it really is the first most important part of crypto narratives, in my opinion, outside of layer ones. As we're starting to see the old TradFi start to adopt, crypto and stuff, it's obviously decentralized finance is the first thing, right? And then you've got your RWAs and stuff. But yeah, I'm a big fan of decentralized finance. Your XPRs, your ZBEX, your XRPs. Another project that I'm going to accumulate aggressively when we get down around the 200 week that quietly has a spot ETF already and stuff like that, as well as HBAR, that no one seems to be talking about the fact that they have an active spot ETF. And I think they're quietly being adopted. So I think big things in the future for them.
Yeah, we're gonna have a huge rally for altcoins. Like I see a comment in the chat about the banana zone and stuff. I'm not saying we won't ever have a parabolic alt rally. Like we will. It's a guarantee at some point we will. I'm just calling out the fact that people have they've constantly been saying banana zone's going to happen now. It's going to happen in a month. It's going to and then they keep pushing the goalpost. Like I was saying earlier, you're going to be right at some point. If you keep saying we're going to have a banana zone and you keep saying it's going to happen like imminently, eventually it will happen, right? And you're going to be right. But people have been calling for a banana zone now for altcoins for like 2 years, and it just hasn't happened yet. And I was never of the belief that this cycle we would have like a crazy blow off top alt season. I believe we would have alt seasons, or like we've had 3 actually. If you look at the alt season index, we've had 3 alt seasons. But I never believed it would be this crazy banana zone parabolic rally because of the monetary policy side of things and the fact that retail aren't doing great right now. But yeah, like we will have another banana zone at some point. Like, we will have that. But the problem I have is not necessarily the idea of banana zone, because we will have one at some point. It's the fact that people just keep calling for it and calling for it, and it doesn't happen. And they keep pushing the goalposts. It was early 2025. Then it was mid 2025. Then it was late 2025. And now they're saying, oh, liquidity is just delayed. Forget about the 4-year cycle. We're on the business cycle now. And then when that doesn't play out, they'll move it to something else. And that's the issue I have, is not the actual idea of the banana zone.
Yeah, influential people trying to pump their own bags, essentially, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's similar to what's his name? Not Jamie. Was it Jamie Dimon? Yeah, was it Jamie Dimon who put in a short on Strategy and then went out publicly and said Strategy's going to go bankrupt? Like, that's pretty borderline market manipulation, in my opinion, right? You go and put in a massive short, knowing how influential you are in the finance world, and then you go publicly and say that the company you just put in a short on is going to go bankrupt. If that had crashed the price, I mean, I would have hoped that somebody would have held Jamie Dimon accountable for market manipulation at that point. If you or I did something like that, we'd be in prison, right?
Yeah.
Like,
it's crazy what people can get away with, man, in this market. People can get away with crazy stuff. And it all comes down to having connections and good lawyers and all of that, right? It all comes down to money at the end of the day. So,
yeah, absolutely, brother. Well, I got some Christmas shopping I got to do, my guy. Oh, let me just see. Okay, cool. Yeah. Perfect timing. I got some Christmas stuff I got to go do. We got to get you back in, man. And again, if you ever want me to pop in on one of your streams or something, just shoot me a DM, man. I really enjoy our collaborations. I think you're a really, really smart dude, man. And we see things very, very similar. So
thank you. Yeah, absolutely. We'll do more of these in the future. Maybe we could do a joint stream one time, or you come over to my show, or we do a different setup. I don't mind. But yeah, really enjoyed the stream, and yeah, looking forward to doing it again. So thank you.
awesome, brother. We'll connect again in a couple of weeks. Take care, my guy.
Thank you. Likewise.
Take care, guys.